Lucia's hands trembled as she stared at the sheet of paper in front of her. The ink seemed to blur into strange symbols, and yet, she recognized every one of them. The tall man in the expensive suit leaned back in his leather chair, watching her like a cat waiting for its prey to stumble. "Go on," he smirked, his voice a mix of mockery and challenge. "Translate this, and my salary for the year is yours." The boardroom was silent except for the faint hum of the city below. A dozen eyes from the other executives flickered between Lucia in her red maid's uniform and the grinning millionaire who seemed far too confident she would fail. The taste of fear mingled with something sharper in her mouth, determination. She tightened her grip on the paper. He didn't know who he was talking to. Before we continue, if you're watching us for the first time, Elliot Stories welcomes you with a warm hug and an even warmer seat in our family. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like this video, drop a comment telling us the city or country you're watching from, and share this story with someone who loves a good twist. Now, let's dive back in. Lucia Vega had been working as a cleaner in the prestigious high-rise for only 3 weeks. The job paid enough to cover her rent if she stretched every coin, but it wasn't the life she had imagined for herself. She had once been a bright student, the kind that teachers whispered about, certain she'd make it far. But life had a way of pulling dreams out from under you. Family emergencies, a sick father, the need to survive rather than dream. That's how she found herself dusting the shelves in the top-floor boardroom that morning, just as Charles Stanton, the company's wealthy and arrogant CEO, breezed in with his entourage. Charles was known for his games. He enjoyed making the staff squirm with impossible challenges, knowing they wouldn't dare stand up to him. He had once paid a valet to jog 5 laps around the block in the middle of winter just for forgetting his name. Today, though, his eyes landed on Lucia. She was polishing the edge of the long conference table when he stopped mid-sentence in a conversation with his CFO. "You," he said suddenly. "What's your name?" "Lucia," she replied, straightening up, unsure what she had done wrong. "Lucia," he repeated as though tasting the word. Then, with a sly grin, he pulled a folded sheet of paper from his briefcase. "Tell you what, if you can translate what's on this page correctly, I'll give you my annual salary. Every cent." A few executives chuckled. Some shook their heads. They knew this was his way of toying with people. Lucia blinked. "Translate. From what language?" He leaned in, eyes glittering. "From Mandarin. No phones. No help. Just you, and that." He slid the paper toward her. What he didn't know was that Lucia had a history he couldn't have guessed from her uniform. Years ago, she had been awarded a scholarship to study international relations. She had spent 2 years in Beijing before her father's illness forced her to return home. Mandarin wasn't just familiar to her, it was second nature. But she kept her face neutral, letting him think she was out of her depth. She looked down at the text. It wasn't just a random passage, it was a business contract, dense with legal phrasing. She could see why he thought it impossible for her. But as her eyes scanned the characters, she could hear the translation forming in her mind as effortlessly as breathing. "You have 10 minutes, Charles said, checking his gold watch. "Or you're fired." There it was, the cruelty that lurked behind his smile. The room tensed. Even the CFO shifted uncomfortably. Lucia nodded once, her heart pounding but her mind steady. She began to speak, her voice calm but clear, translating line by line. The words flowed, each clause perfectly mirrored in English, each idiom rendered with precision. A few executives started glancing at each other. By the 3rd paragraph, the chuckles had died out. By the 5th, Charles's smile had frozen. When she reached the last sentence, she placed the paper gently on the table. "That's the full translation," she said, meeting his gaze. The room was silent for a beat before one of the executives murmured, "That was perfect." Another nodded. "Better than the last translator we hired." Charles's jaw tightened. "You could have memorized this somehow." Lucia raised an eyebrow. "You printed this from your laptop 10 minutes ago. I saw you. Unless you think I can read your files from across the room, I assure you, it's all from my training." He didn't respond. For the first time, the smugness slipped from his face. An older board member leaned forward. "Charles, you made an offer in front of all of us. Your word matters here." Lucia watched him wrestle with the reality. To back out would tarnish his reputation among his own people. To follow through would mean losing a staggering amount of money. The room's tension became almost tangible. Finally, he forced a laugh. "Well, a deal's a deal. But I don't carry that kind of cash." He reached for his checkbook. Lucia stopped him. Keep your money. The room's collective breath seemed to pause. I don't want your salary, she continued. I want a job. One that uses my skills, not just my hands. The boardroom erupted in low whispers. Charles stared at her, as though recalculating who she was entirely. And why should I give you that? Because, she said, standing tall, you've just seen what I can do. If you think a woman like me belongs scrubbing your tables, that's your loss. But I guarantee the right position for me will make you more money than you're about to lose by writing that check. The oldest board member chuckled. She's right, Charles. She's the kind of person we need. After a long pause, Charles's lips twitched into a reluctant smile. Fine. You start Monday. Translator for our Asia-Pacific contracts. Lucia felt a rush of triumph. Not because she had humbled him, though she had, but because she had proven to herself that she was still the person she thought she'd lost. Over the next months, she became indispensable to the company. She didn't just translate, she negotiated, navigated cultural nuances, and secured deals that stunned even the most seasoned executives. Charles never quite lost his arrogance, but his tone toward her shifted. There was a grudging respect now, though he'd never admit it outright. One evening, months later, after they had finalized a multi-million-dollar partnership with a Chinese firm, Charles called her into his office. You know, he said, I offered that challenge to embarrass you. But I think I ended up embarrassing myself. Lucia smiled faintly. We both learned something that day. He leaned back, studying her. If I'd paid you my salary, I would have lost money. Hiring you was the better investment. Lucia chuckled. Glad you finally realized it. And for the first time since she had met him, they laughed together, not as employer and maid, but as colleagues who understood each other. The moral lesson here is simple. Never underestimate someone because of where they stand today. You don't know the roads they've traveled or the skills they carry quietly. Respect should never be determined by a uniform, a paycheck, or a title. People are often more than they appear, and arrogance blinds you to opportunities that humility would seize. And as Eliot Stories always says, your circumstances do not define your capacity. The world may try to place limits on you, but it's your persistence, courage, and refusal to let others write your ending that will take you where you belong. So keep pushing, keep believing, and never let anyone's low opinion of you become your reality.